The illusion of righteousness and the great day of reckoning. The current system of the church is often fractured by an undercurrent of abuse, masked as authority. We live in a reality where someone seeks your submission only to give you out to your offenders, forcing a performative forgiveness designed entirely to demote and silence you. True forgiveness is a sacred process, but within these corrupted walls, it is weaponized. Don't forget that forgiveness isn't blindly handed out to wickedness. God himself forgives ignorance, not intentional, calculated sin. Yet, a priest will routinely go ahead of you just to eat your justice, stripping away your right just to reduce you to nothing. It is a profoundly evil world, and it forces a stark question upon every soul. Where do you belong? On the last day, the illusion of righteous titles, religious titles, will shatter. Workers of iniquities will not be afraid to stand before Jesus. They will confidently argue that they are deserving of heaven. They will rely on their accolade, their altars, and their influence, entirely blinded by their own self-righteousness. A pastor will say confidently, "I am Pastor James." But Pastor James has forgotten the trail of devastation he left behind in the name of ministry. He has forgotten how he took someone else's glory and finished it. In his unchecked authority, he took a young girl's glory and decided to corrupt her, just so he could freely use her and trash her like a piece of trash. James trespassed against the laws of God and humanity. He wasn't supposed to woo a young teenage girl named Grace. In his deception, he wooed Grace spiritually, violating her soul and targeting her long before the physical world even saw the damage. James didn't stand for truth. Instead, he decided to compromise Grace. To cover his tracks, he put Grace up for marriage and claims he only wooed her because wooing seems to be allowed in the Christian system. James thought he had escaped divine scrutiny. In order to successfully get away with his crime, he engineered a deeply manipulative spiritual trap operating entirely in the unseen realm. He made another girl to spiritually hold Grace, claiming that the girl is holding her husband. This calculated accusation was designed entirely because he wanted to demote Grace. Seeing that Grace was able to stand firmly, he falsely claimed that she only held that strength because she stole the status of a man. Through this lie, his sole objective was to reduce Grace to an ordinary girl, demoting her completely and stripping away her spiritual standing. James then forced Grace, the orphan girl, to give out a husband to another girl. This forced spiritual transaction, compelling Grace to prematurely release a husband at a young age when it was not yet time, inflicted deep systemic damage, altering the entire course of her life and destiny. He used this spiritual setup to claim that not everyone who woos Grace must marry her, because she had also taken a man and given him out. Through this cruel manipulation, since it is recorded in his rigged system that Grace took a man and gave him out, he used his power to abuse Grace, the orphan girl, meaning that as she had given out a man she had taken, then someone else can also take her, woo her, and go away, because she had also taken a man and given him out. Grace, the virgin girl, who had not experienced anything in such manner, that didn't even know such a thing is in practice or in existence. James had already taken her glory and decided to roll her to the opposite direction, completely from where she is headed to, because he wants Grace to remain under his authority of wickedness and evil. He created just another escape, hiding behind religious loopholes while destroying the vulnerable in the spiritual realm to force her complete demotion. James went ahead to claim he is a punisher of sinners, and decided to frame Grace just to condemn her the more. He deliberately manipulated her actions so he could tag her a sinner, believing that only then would he be able to continue to abuse Grace. He had not only opened a pathway of spiritual abuse, he condemned Grace and claimed she belonged to Satan. But that devastating label was only applied after he had taken her glory and played her role, corrupting all her values, her standard, and her virtues. Once he had drained her, he let Grace go. He set Grace, the orphan girl, free, only after he caused her to be beaten by someone not worthy to lay a hand on her in the name of discipline, reducing her spiritual ranking and demoting her completely. James then decided he did all that for God. He went as far as to cause Grace to inappropriately touch someone in her family who had done her wrong. A woman who had already been secretly abusing her for years, abusing her repeatedly without her knowledge or consent. James took Grace's autonomy and decided she would revenge all that had been done to her. But the scales of his justice were entirely warped. How can abusing a virgin girl pay for a touching of a woman who had battered many children? James continued to ride on Grace's glory, claiming he was a priest doing the work of God. He forced everything good out of Grace and called her a witch. He even claimed all the virtues he took from her belongs to God, arguing that Grace, being labeled a witch, didn't qualify to have them. Consequently, Grace became entirely empty. He took Grace, the orphan girl, and sold her cheaply to her very own enemies. Her family who betrayed her in the first place, her friends who did her wrong, everyone who wanted to have a piece of her. Spiritually, Grace was left with absolutely no autonomy. They only let her live because he couldn't kill her. Eventually, the weight of the wickedness catches up. Finally, James realized he had beaten more than he can swallow. To escape the earthly fallout, he hands over his will, claiming he had fought the battle and he had finished well. He claimed he had given himself to be killed for God's sake. Yet, the torment did not end at the grave. James died and still came back to occupy Grace's body and continued to torment Grace, the orphan girl. In the spiritual realm, there seems to be a gathering of self-righteous saints. James happens to make it there, and in his delusion, he thinks he had done enough. He is welcomed home by those as blind as him, and he considers this fake heaven as the final move of God. But the true sovereign cannot be mocked. He forgets that on the last day, the heaven will shake, the entire universe will shake, and all will come before Jesus for judgment. On the great day of the Lord, books will be opened. Indeed, books will be opened. No title, no loophole, and no false narrative will save the oppressor when the true light lays bare the secrets of the heart. I want to ask you all, where do you belong? You that claim to be a pastor, what have you done to eat the justice of others? You even claim people can be sacrificed. You thought that grace is meant for sacrifice because her family had given her out. So grace meant to die. Grace is created by God just so you could kill her in the name of doing God a service. You that called yourself a pastor, I hope you are not another worker of iniquity like James who had died and thought he has made it to heaven.